everybody. I want to welcome you all to the final in our non-business series, or rather our non-technical series called the Encore. We had Isaiah, who did an amazing job with product management, Sadia, who did an amazing job with program management, Jasmine, who just stole the hearts of many with her stuff for marketing, and Morris, who really showed us how much it takes confidence to really win in his space of tech sales. Finally, we have somebody here who's just a pillar in our community. She has done so much for us, and I can't wait to introduce you to that. But before I introduce her, let me introduce myself and say, welcome. I'm Dominique. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer here at the Mentor Me Collective, and I'm very thankful that we have all of you here. Please take a moment to share this on LinkedIn, on YouTube, your Twitter, your Instagram. We really want to get a big audience. Thank you all for showing up as much as you can. Thank you all for being a part of this series. And so we're continuing events in July with some of our great Black technologists. And so before we get in, I just want to know a couple of things about our audience tonight. If y'all are returning, great. I'd love to see it. I'll make sure I highlight y'all. But are y'all in school, in boot camp, or self-learning? Are you applying for your first role? Are you growing or glowing in your career? Please, regardless of where you are, we really want you to know that you are supported, you are loved, and we want to help you. Drop some fire emojis. Let me know where you're at. Let me know where you stay at, because we have always had visitors from around the world. And so before I get into our guest of the evening, I just want to take you through our referral zone again. We still have Microsoft, we have Amazon, Resilia, Zillow, Netflix, etc., and many more. People have really stepped up. They work at these companies and they want to help you get to these interviews, because sometimes when you have, hundreds of recs for positions, it really takes a lot of effort to see your resume, and we want to do what we can to help. And one of the ways that we do that is with this. So please sign up for our referral zone. You can visit the link at bit.ly/MMC refers. Once again, bit.ly/MMC-reserves. So I just want to take a moment to introduce you to the team and how to join if you're interested, something about our upcoming fellowship and mentor program, how to opt into our text reminders, how to visit our Etsy shop, and lastly about our Encore service giveaway. So, like I said before, I'm Dominique. I'm the Chief Strategy and Business Officer here. We got Chanel P, who has brought together this big community where we all share and learn from each other. None of this is possible without her. Please make sure you connect with her and, really and pick her mind. We have Ashley, who's our community impact coordinator, and Brianna, who's the social media strategist. But there's more. We have Sade, who's our graphic designer, Dominique and Sharika, who are both user experience designers, and also Diamond, who's our operations engineer. All lovely ladies, all really dope people. I'm so lucky to work with them. And if you think that you might want to add something to the team, please visit bit.ly/MMC.T and select the volunteer inquiry with me. Once again, that's bit.ly/MMC-T and select the inquiry with me. So we have a fellowship that's launching actually in just a couple of weeks. It's called our User Design and Research Fellowship for the fall of 2022. I've seen so many talented people get in here. We also have a lot of great mentors in this program. And so I can't wait to see them and see them how they highlight the community. We're partnering with Miro, Microsoft, and also the Barron Review. So please, we're going to always be promoting these types of things. If you missed this one, no worries. Because guess what? We're going to have a spring 2023 cohort, and you can join that by going to bit.ly/MMC-mentee. Are you ready for a free summit? Now, y'all heard us talk about this the whole week. This is really a baby. This is something that has been planned for a long time, but now we really want y'all to get involved with the Apex Summit. And you can register for that at bit.ly/the Apex Summit. And this is a space for Black technologists to build, connect, and grow while providing a bridge for the next generation to follow suit. Y'all are the future. We want to make sure that bridge is stronger than when we was younger. Again, go up and sign if you're interested to learn more at bit.ly/the Apex Summit. It will be happening in Atlanta, Georgia. We are expecting about 1,000 plus attendees from October 5th through the 8th, totally in Libra season, and it's totally free. The only thing you need to pay is for your stay at wherever you're staying and your flight, and we hope that we can see you out there. And these are just some of the people that we really want to see there. Whether you're a student, a contributor, or a leader, there's a space for you. There's content for you there. So please take the time to come out and show some support. Once again, if you want to learn when the tickets go live, just subscribe to bit.ly/the Apex Summit. How to opt into our text reminders. Just want to let y'all know we don't spam y'all with anything. We just want to let y'all know when we have events like this going on, and for anything like our giveaways that I will share more shortly. You will text MMC to 866-901-1914. Again, that's MMC to 866-901-1914. Remember when I talked to you Saturday and I showed you all about the designs? Well, guess what? You can see a whole bunch of her designs at our Etsy shop. She designed everything there. Very talented individual. We love to see her get noticed, and you can see some of the stuff that she's created just for us by visiting etsy.com/shop/mentor me collective. And guess what, y'all? It's not an MMC event without a giveaway. That's right, y'all. So what I want y'all to do is grab your pen and paper. I want y'all to connect with us on your social media, and I also want y'all to complete an online quiz. And this is just rehashing that. Again, take some notes because we will ask some questions. Tag us in some social media posts, and also text MMC to 866-901-1914. And these are just some of the things that we have. You have Apple AirTags that I hear are very popular, a HomePod Mini, a Hydrate water bottle, and finally a Nanoly smart light bulb. But guess what? Again, y'all didn't come to hear me. Y'all came for the lady of the hour. And so this has been somebody in our community. This has somebody who has done a lot just for us. She's always down to help. She's always down to refer. We're honestly so blessed to have her in the community. So I want y'all to give it a round of applause for Miss Ryan Croom.
Hi guys. I'm super excited to just be working with everybody today and diving into all things customer success. I currently work as a customer success manager at Gong, but we'll dive into a little bit more about my journey today. We'll talk about some of the things that customer success managers do, as well as some of the skill sets that I think are just really key to understand how we can thrive in a customer success field, and have a few resources to share with everyone if I don't scare you away from CS after this presentation. But really just super excited to be here with y'all, super excited to be helping you. I am so passionate about getting more of us into tech and into customer success. I think we're so underrepresented in the field, and there's so much that we can do. So, I steamed a blouse for y'all. I got hoops on. This is really about you guys and helping you all. So definitely ask questions, connect with me on LinkedIn afterwards, but excited for us to get going.
I can't wait to see this presentation because she's been ready. So again, we'll drop her LinkedIn at the end, but now I get to say to Miss Ryan.
I think I like to always start these kinds of presentations or just these types of talks with talking about what a customer success manager is. For a lot of people, it's not a field that we're as familiar with or a field that we've ever heard of before. And so I just wanted to kind of start by giving us a definition to all work off of. So what is a customer success manager? And that person is the person who's going to own the relationship for a customer post-sale. So after we've sold to the customer, typically a software as a service, what we call SaaS, we're going to introduce them to who their customer success manager is. And so sometimes I think it's really helpful to define what a customer success manager is not, or what they don't do, so that we can really understand where is their focus and where are they spending the majority of their day. A lot of times when I talk with relatives or other people in my family or friends and I tell them I'm a customer success manager, the first thing that they tell me is, oh, so you work in support. And while there's definitely a lot of overlap between what I do in support and what people do in support and what I do as a customer success manager, I think the main difference here is going to be proactivity versus reactive. And so what I mean by that is when we think about someone working in a technical role like support, they're reactively engaging with customers. That means we've already identified there's a problem. We've already identified that there's an escalation. And so now we're responding to that to de-escalate the customer or fix the technical issue or whatever that might be. Whereas my role is going to be a lot more proactive. That's a really big buzzword for you guys that are thinking about moving into the role. So what I think of as myself is I'm always looking 100 feet ahead. I'm looking at a customer, I'm getting to know them, I'm fostering a really strong relationship so that I can see that there might be a potential risk or that there might be a potential problem in the future. And I'm doing what I can to mitigate that so we never get to that escalated point. So like I said, lots of overlap there, but really just that proactive versus reactive. I think the second thing to understand that I'm not is sales. So I am responsible for a small quota at my role at Gong. So I do want to make sure my customers are growing with us at Gong, that they're continuing to use our software. But ultimately, my role is not quota driven the same way that you would expect a sales or an account executive to be. So what I mean by that, like, I don't spend any time doing things like cold calling. I'm never hunting for new opportunities. My main focus with customers is really about fostering that strong relationship. So I'm tuning into their goals and I'm helping to provide them with solutions. And so, I don't do technical support. We're not doing sales. So what is it that I'm really doing and what is it that I'm responsible for? And I think that's a great question. You'll see on LinkedIn a lot of discussion around what should be the primary goal of a CSM or what is the main focus for a CSM. And every organization is going to have something a little bit different. But I think if you take away all of the jargon, like all of the big fancy words, what I really think customer success boils down to, and this is across every organization and every company I've worked at, it's about empathizing and really understanding customers. I have to understand customers and I have to understand what are their goals, what are their pains, like what are they solving for today? And then it's my job to take the tool that I'm working for or the service that I provide and figure out, how can we engineer this tool? How can you use this tool so that we can start to solve those problems that you're facing, so that we can start to level you up to that next place as a business? Also included in that role is making sure I understand like where our pain points are in our tool. So maybe there's something our tool doesn't do today, or maybe there's a problem our tool isn't really great at solving. And so I need to understand that so I can pass that back to my company and my business and give them that feedback. And lastly, I think a big piece of my role is going to be around identifying what we call risk. So when we bring customers on to Gong, we want to make sure that they find value and that they get an ROI. That means return on investment. So they've given us money to provide a solution, and we want to make sure we're connecting them to that solution. If I notice that a customer is maybe not connecting to that solution, isn't finding the value, a lot of my role will also be spent understanding how can we mitigate that risk. So how can we maybe provide them a different solution in the tool? Maybe we need to change our service, or maybe we've identified that this customer is just not a good fit for the service or the tool we provide. And so moving forward, we can tell people in sales like, hey, this isn't going to be a good fit, like based on this criteria. So kind of the big points or takeaways of what I really view my role to be and where I really think I need to lean in. And, thinking about like a day in the life as a customer success manager, and what does my day look like? This is another one that can vary like really widely across different organizations, just depending on the type of product or the type of service that you might be offering. But the role that I'm specifically at here at Gong, I manage what we call a portfolio. So that means all of the customers that I own or that I'm responsible for are rolling up into that portfolio. Within my portfolio, I have about 30 customers. And so for my role at Gong specifically, the majority of my day is going to be spent just in customer calls. So definitely a role for people that are a little more extroverted, are really comfortable being people facing, a little more social. So I own 30 customers and I'm responsible for meeting with each of those 30 customers at least once quarterly to host a call that we call a business review. So I host this quarterly business review. The majority of my time is going to be on the business reviews that I host and the prep time for those business reviews. And the goal of the business review is really just to align on all of the things that I talked about kind of in the beginning. So let's highlight, where is the success happening in our partnership? Is there any risk with this customer? Are they unhappy about anything? Is there something I need to uncover or change in how I'm servicing them? Or maybe, they're really happy. They really love Gong, but right now their sales team is the only team that's using. And so I can use that quarterly business review as an opportunity to ask them like, hey, what other teams in your company might have an interest in using Gong? Or would you mind introducing me to other people in your company to see if maybe there's some synergy to get them using our tool and using our product? In that, I also will still host a variety of just kind of ad hoc calls. So customers have questions. Maybe they've changed their business model. They want to know how Gong should be impacted, things like that. So majority of the time in calls, quarterly business reviews are going to be that most important call for me, whereas the ad hoc calls are kind of second in nature. In that role and kind of in that day-to-day, there's also some other admin things that come up with the role as well. Probably my email inbox is going to be the second place where I'm spending the majority of my day and the majority of my time. So in those emails, I'm going to be responding to customer questions. Maybe I'm doing things like passing along product feedback to my product managers. Maybe they have a question about technical support and they need someone to help them troubleshoot. So I'm connecting them to our technical resource. Maybe they want to work with my sales team because they have a question about their contract. Those sort of things, just making sure I'm connecting them to the right resources. And then I would say I spend like whatever time I'm not on Zoom, the time I'm not on email, I'm spending with other people at Gong, just within other departments, thinking about ways to service customers. In my role, since I'm not really responsible for a quota the same way a sales rep is, I work directly with sales reps in order to grow accounts. And so that last kind of portion of my day or time is really going to be spent working with the sales reps on my team to understand my accounts. So the first piece of that is there growth? How do we get in front of the account to get that growth, to get that intro to that new sales team or that new department, or sell them, 10 more seats or 15 more seats? And then on the flip side of that, there's also, is there risk? So maybe this is a customer that in my last quarterly business review, they said, hey, Rye, you're great. We're not sure we're going to renew with Gong. And what that means is they're not sure they want to continue paying us that money for that service year over year. And so working with the sales rep to think about what's a good strategy to bring this customer back into the fold, to really bring them back to that ROI or that value that we know we can bring to them so that we can make sure as a business, we get this revenue or this money year over year. So, that's really the day in my life. And I'll emphasize again, every company is going to be slightly different. I would say like a more mature startup, you're probably going to see customer success managers having more siloed responsibilities, whereas sometimes a younger startup, a customer success manager will have a variety of different roles and responsibilities. You'll see places like Zoom is a really good example of this. They actually segment their customer success managers by sector. So you can work at Zoom and only work with clients in the government space or only work with clients in the university space. And within most places that you'll see, they'll also segment customer success managers by what we call segment. So that means the size of the business that we're servicing. So what I've typically found to be true throughout my career is as you scale or as you mature into your customer success career, you'll have the opportunity to tackle and handle some larger clients. So typically what we'll see is a more entry-level role CSM or a more entry-level CSM with maybe not as much experience is going to be working with what we call commercial or smaller businesses. So you might not be talking to them every day. You might not have as many quarterly business reviews that you're responsible for. Maybe you're doing things that are more tech heavy. So what I mean by that is maybe your team sets you up with email cadences that you can send to multiple customers at once. And that's a part of your role. You're not doing as much deep dive with each customer. As you move into customer success, as you mature in your career, you'll start to get the ability to do things like work with Fortune 500 or enterprise companies. And so you might only have 5 to 10 customers in your portfolio, but you're going to be diving really deep. We're not going to be using a heavy tech touch. Everything is probably going to be super customized, super personalized to that customer and that client. So just to give you guys some lingo, because I know when I first started looking for customer success roles, it can be confusing when you see things like mid-market, commercial, SMB, enterprise, like those are all falling under that same umbrella, but small business is usually a good place to start because you have more tech tools to help you figure out how to engage with those customers. And as you really start to hone in on what your strategy is as a CSM and start to understand like really good risk mitigation strategies, really good growth strategies, you can start to apply those to a smaller number of customers and move what we call upmarket. So it would be SMB, small business, mid-market, and then enterprise and strategic accounts is usually how most companies will segment. I'm watching the chat. So if you guys do have questions, I should have said this at the beginning, please pop them in the chat. I know this is a lot of new lingo and hopefully a lot of new information for some of you guys, but just wanted to kind of connect you to the, like, what is a customer success manager? What do we do? And help make sure that you guys really understand the difference between this role and support and sales, which I know is a a pretty big confusion for a lot of people. So I want to kind of take a step back and talk a little bit more about myself. And I think I want to give the big caveat, which is that 10 years ago, if you had asked me where I would be in my career, I definitively would not have said tech. I had no interest in working for a startup. I had no interest in moving into tech. I really didn't know a lot about the field and it didn't intrigue me a whole lot. But I actually studied business and marketing in college, and I only did it because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life after I graduated. And I just figured, hey, like if I get a business degree, I'm sure I can graduate and I can find a job and it'll be fine. Like I wasn't super sure or dedicated on a specific path. While I was in college, I was working as a key holder at a retail store. And so that's how I made money, for my textbooks and food and those types of things. And so when I graduated, they actually offered me the ability to be promoted and move into kind of a full-time management role. And so I figured to myself, I was looking at other job opportunities. I was taking other interviews, but the salary offered at the retail management position was actually a lot higher than what I was seeing in some of those other roles. And so I was like, hey, instead of going into the corporate world, I'm just going to keep working this retail management job. This is a lot better. I don't need to move into a corporate career. This is when we're flexible. I get to talk to people. I get to, shop all day. This is awesome. So I worked in retail management for around 3 years. And after my third year, I just hit a place where I was really starting to look for more of a work-life balance. There's a lot of really good things about retail, but there's also a lot of really bad things about retail. And one of those is just the inability to take off holidays, working weekends. It can be really hard to maintain work-life balance and see all the people that you love when you're not always on the same schedule as them. And so at this time, I had zero tech experience. I really only had one field of work on my resume, and that was retail management. But for those of you guys that are located or have ever been to the Atlanta area, I used to work at the J. Crew at Lenox Square Mall. And I just kind of said to myself, Rye, you have worked a Black Friday shift at one of the biggest malls in Atlanta. There's literally nothing that you can't do. We're just going to put our head down and we're going to figure out how we're going to make this pivot. And so I kind of just took that mindset. And I was able to find a job at a small agency. So the agency that I worked for was actually responsible for helping local retailers and local mom and pop shops and setting them up with websites where they could sell their merchandise online, not just in a brick and mortar store as well. And so I was really able to get this job by selling myself and my expertise. I knew working with retail, I knew retailers, I knew how to sell to a store, and I understood some of the things that they were going through and maybe some of the hesitations they might have around selling online or getting into the e-commerce space. And that's how I was able to make that pivot and that transition to that first role. Once I kind of got my foot in the door, I got my feet wet and started to understand more about the role of customer success. I hit a place with that company. I really loved them, but they were a really small agency. And I wanted to move to a bigger company where I could have a little bit more career growth and opportunity. And I want to kind of draw attention to what I did next, which is I actually didn't move into another customer success role. I actually took a step back in my career and I moved to Calendly, which was a much bigger company, offered me a lot more growth opportunity, but I moved into a support role. So for 6 months, I worked with their support team, where my primary responsibility was just answering emailed support tickets from customers. And I was really more of a technical, that reactive support that we talked about in the beginning of the presentation. And so I worked in that role for about 6 months. When there was a customer success role that opened within Calendly, I was given the opportunity to go back into customer success. And while I definitely learned a lot of really good skills in support, and while I enjoyed my time there because it really got me super familiar with the product and able to understand and articulate where customers might get stuck or where they might be frustrated, I was ready to move back into a space where my primary goal wasn't necessarily tickets, but just fostering and building those really strong relationships. Stayed at Calendly for a few years and then hit that same place again. I don't know if you guys can catch a theme here, but I'm fairly ambitious. And I always want to just make sure I'm at a space where I can be, learning something new. At Calendly, I served a book of about 100 or a portfolio of about 100 customers. I was using more of a tech touch, more email cadences, and I was ready to take my career to a place where I had a smaller book of business, maybe 25 to 30 customers and get really deep, get really ingrained in their businesses and really understand them. So from there, I moved to a company called Gong, which is where I'm currently working today. I moved there in December. So have really enjoyed my time there. But I kind of say all of this and I give you guys my whole journey just to say, like, I didn't have tech experience when I came into customer success. I still don't have a lot of technical expertise. A lot of the people that I know that work in customer success don't necessarily have technical expertise. I don't know anything about coding. I can barely get through data science as it is. And you really don't have to have those skill sets to move into customer success. I saw a question about the skills for pivoting, and we're definitely going to get into those in a minute. But I just want you guys to understand, like, what is the industry experience, or what is the specific skill set or experience you have, and how can you leverage that to move into the field? So I have a friend who used to work at an elementary school as an elementary school teacher, and she recently pivoted into tech at a company called New Zealand. And even though she had no tech experience, she was able to sell herself and stand out from the crowd by saying, like, hey, I don't have the technical experience, but what I do have is the ability to connect to teachers, the ability to connect and talk to educators in a language that they understand, because I am one. So, I think a lot of times, like, it can be super demoralizing, like when you're in that struggle, and I have been there before, and you're trying to just get your foot in the door and you're just constantly getting auto rejected, and you're trying to figure out, like, how do I break into this field? How do I, get over this hump? And I feel like for me, like, where I started to find success initially when I wanted to pivot, I was just on LinkedIn, on Indeed, just auto applying to like every job that I could find that I thought might maybe give me an interview or a chance to get in the door. And I had to kind of take a step back and think about, maybe this retail experience that I have isn't a hindrance. Maybe it's not a blocker. Maybe this is something that can actually be, I call it my superpower. And so when I started to frame my alternate experience as a superpower and something that maybe helped me to stand out, I was able to actually really take a step back and reflect on, what are the skills that I learned? What are the competencies that I have that other people might not have because they don't have the same exact retail experience? And so once I was able to really do that and reflect, like, that's really when I was able to kind of strategically apply to roles that I knew matched the skills that I had. And I was able to really speak to those roles and speak to those skills. And that's where I really found the success in pivoting. And so just something I kind of tell for all of you, I know there was someone that I saw in the chat who's looking to pivot out of one role into customer success. It is definitely can be really challenging and it can feel really frustrating, but just really take a look inside of yourself, like really understand, like, what are the skills, what are the competencies and like specific industry experience that you have, because that is really valuable and companies will hire for that, even if you don't necessarily have the other skills, or if on paper, you're not the person who graduated college and has been a CSM for 10 years. Like, you don't need those things. You can still break into the field. I think it's still possible for you. So from here, wanted to kind of dive into some of the skills that are needed. And again, there's no technical skill really listed here. That's intentional. I don't think that you necessarily need to have technical skills unless you're really looking to work in more like of a technical support or like technical engineer type of role. I think for the role that I do, anytime I need technical assistance, there's a department that handles all of those pieces for me. I have not helped a customer troubleshoot something in maybe 2 years. So just wanted to draw attention to the fact that none of these skills are technical skills, and that was very intentional. So what are some of the skills needed, right? What are the skills that could set us apart? I think the first one is going to be empathy. For those of you that are moving out of a service industry, this is a place where I think we really excel. Like, are we able to understand a customer's pain point? Are we able to connect with people in a real and genuine way? The ability to grasp this skill is just the foundation to being a solid customer success manager. If you come to me and you're a brand new person in customer success, I can teach you, the process that I use. I can teach you the product that we're using. I can teach you a technical skill if you need that skill to really thrive in that particular role or organization. I cannot teach people how to be empathetic if it's not something that just comes naturally to them. And when you think about it, the majority of my day is spent either interfacing or advocating for my customers in some way. And so empathy is just going to be so crucial for me to be able to thrive in this role because I have to have that to do the baseline of my job. The second one I want to talk about is communication. And so again, solid portion of my day, I'm talking to customers. That might be on the phone, it might be on Zoom, it might be in an email thread. And I want us to kind of go beyond just like being eloquent or being a good writer, and really lean into the question of, are you able to effectively deliver or communicate value to a customer in a conversation, whether that be on an email chain or in a slide deck? How are you able to do that? Like, what is your unique way of being able to deliver that value as you communicate? Are you an active listener? So when a customer is asking you for something, are you able to really dive deep into what they're asking for and get to the bottom of their issue? I think this is a place where a lot of healthcare workers are actually really successful at, because they're used to having people maybe come in with one issue, but we have to dive a little deeper to understand, like, what is the root cause of that issue? So what does that discovery look like? So I want you to kind of think beyond just like, well, yeah, I'm a really good writer, or like, yes, I have a really high reading comprehension, and think about, am I able to really communicate with people in a way where they can trust me as their advisor and their advocate? The next one I'm going to talk about is objection handling. I think this skill often doesn't get discussed in customer success circles because a lot of times we attribute this skill to being a really good sales rep or a really good seller. And while I think that's definitely the truth, I think there's also a lot of use that we can find in learning how to handle objections. And so when I was able to conquer this skill as a CSM, this is honestly when my career was able to take off and I was able to handle those more strategic and more complicated accounts, is when I was able to kind of master objection handling. So I think one of the toughest pieces of my job is that I'm a people pleaser. And sometimes we have to tell the customer no. As someone who'd come from, the service and the retail industry, that was really difficult for me to grasp at first because I was used to that mantra of the customer is always right. When you move into tech, when you move into a more corporate type of role, the customer just can't always be right. Sometimes customers will want things like refunds for, a purchase or a contract they've already signed, or they want me to wave a magic wand and make the product do something that it's just never going to do, or solve a problem that we never intended to solve and we never intend to solve. And so I think learning how to say no to customers is actually a really big skill set that can take you really far. And it's not just learning how to say no to them, but it's learning how to say no to them in a way that they understand, like, why we're giving them that no, why what they're asking for is not something that we're able to give them. And usually it's in their best interest. And so I think, instead of viewing the best CSM as the person who bends over backwards the most for customers or will do anything for the customer to make them happy, I think the best CSM is one who is able to balance the needs of the customer, also the needs of the business that they work for, but still able to communicate with the customer in a way where they still have that trust, they still have that strong relationship. It's just built up transparency and understanding that, hey, like, this is the service that we offer. Here's what we're able to give you. Like, outside of the scope of this is not something I'm able to provide, and here's why. And so if you guys are like ever interested, honestly, in learning about this, I would say, like, look through some sales things as well. Just like that objection handling will take you so far in the ability to say no and the ability to balance both the needs of customer and our business. Next, we have time management. I feel like this one is kind of a no-brainer in our lives. This comes up a lot. How are we balancing and effectively managing our time? So for those of you guys that are picking up on some of the industry lingo, what we call this is portfolio prioritization within CS specifically. And so what does that mean? I have 30 customers. I have 8 hours in each workday. I can't talk to everybody every single day. I have a to-do list. I have emails to check. I have business reviews to prep for. Every day I have to think about, where are my efforts going to go? How am I allocating my time to each of my customers so that I can have the largest impact? So a lot of things are going to go into that decision. Typically, I'll say if a customer is at the top of my book of business, so that means if they're spending the most ARR or annual recurring revenue, like bringing the most money into Gong, I'm going to spend a little bit more time with that customer than maybe a customer who doesn't spend quite as much money with us, just because the effort that I put in here is going to produce a larger ROI for the business than maybe the effort here. But maybe one day I log in and this customer who doesn't spend as much money is really upset because they've had a technical issue. There's something that they can't figure out today. And I know that this customer is really happy. We just hosted our business review. They're doing really well. They want me to bring Gong to their, recruiting team because they love it so much. So maybe I'm going to shift my energy, shift my focus to this customer here because they need a little bit more of my time. And again, I only have 8 hours in the day. I can't reach out to them both today. I can only pick one. And so learning like that lingo or learning how to do that portfolio prioritization, it'll come up a lot in interviews actually. When I was at Calendly, I know one of the things that we looked at, one of the competencies that we looked at was, can someone take a book of business and understand like which customer they should allocate the most time to and who should be the highest priority and lowest priority? It's just a really big focus for us and is something that will allow you to really go up the ladder pretty quickly because you're able to identify like, this is where I'll find ROI, and that's what leadership will start to notice. So the last skill that I'm going to talk about, and this is kind of my mental health plug here, is going to be balance. I am super extroverted. I love being on the phone. I love being on Zoom. I love talking to customers, but even I have a limit to how much social interaction I can have before I start to feel myself get a little tired, before I kind of need to take that step back and have a break. And so I just want to put this out there for all of you guys. For me, what this means right now is I have unlimited PTO. I need to be taking that PTO. I need to be proactively putting in days where I'm taking the time off. And I even do things for myself sometimes, like giving myself one day a month where I don't have a lot of customer calls so I can get my admin things done, so I can just have a day where I don't have to put, makeup on and get on a Zoom call and be super on or super professional with the customer. And for you guys that aren't in the field yet, I would say still, this is a really good thing to think about and a really good thing to bring into your mindset. We just can't show up as our best selves when we're not restored. And so if you're in that grind still of like applying every day, like I will be completely honest with you guys, I had no success when I was just like applying for jobs, like wake up at 9 a.m., open my laptop, apply all day, close it at 9 p.m., wake up and do the same thing again. It's like when I let myself take that step back, when I let myself have that breather, that's when I was able to really start to thrive. And then for those of you that are new into the field, I think it's really easy for us to get burned out because we so badly want to prove ourselves and prove that we're worthy of the job. But if you got the job, you're worthy of it. We don't have to deal with imposter syndrome here. And so just think about, how are we showing up for customers if we're not showing up as our best selves, and we're not our best selves when we're tired, when we haven't taken that time off to just recharge and unplug. And so wanted to give my kind of mental health plug at the end of all of these skills, because I think this is still super important to making sure we thrive in this role. So if I haven't scared you off from customer success yet, and you are still super interested in the role or super interested in what we can do to learn more, I compiled some of the resources that I have used in the past and still use today to just help me understand the customer success landscape. So the first one is called the Customer Success Project. It's run by a woman named Diana de Jesus. I don't know how often she updates it anymore because I think she did just take a new role as customer marketing manager elsewhere. But what I will say is I think the archives on this website are still incredibly helpful. I find this page to be a really good place to go if you're looking for like more information on how we can take some of those transferable skills and really move into customer success and make that pivot out of another field or another, department into customer success. That's where I would go for that type of information. The next one is going to be Gainsight's blog. So Gainsight is a customer success software. It's actually a leader in that space. And so they have a really good blog, just kind of detailing some of the processes that you might see in customer success, how you can up-level yourself in those processes. So a good place to peruse just to get yourself familiar with what other teams and other departments might be doing, especially because they'll highlight different companies. And I think it's always interesting to see, like my company does one thing, and so my role looks like this, but every company is going to be slightly different. And so I think it's helpful to have all those perspectives. The next one is Gain, Grow, Retain, and that's actually a page on LinkedIn that I follow. I really like just following some of the conversations and the post and what happens in the comments. You'll see a lot of industry leaders and other CS professionals that are actually subscribing to that page and just giving their 2 cents and their feedback. They also have a website too. I just happen to follow them on LinkedIn because it's a little easier for me. But I think this is a good place just to start to familiarize yourself with like some of the lingo that they use. I know I gave us some industry terms today, but it's almost like never ending all of the different terminology that a lot of different brands will use. And so I think it's helpful when you start to move into the field, and it shows a commitment to the job when you know the industry lingo and you can speak to recruiters in those terminologies. And then lastly, I just put LinkedIn here. And what I mean by this is, I feel like a lot of us have companies in mind that we think are really awesome, or we know people that we think are really cool. And I would just encourage you to go ahead and follow those people. Like, I followed Gong on LinkedIn for about 1.5 years before I ever worked there. And when I actually went through the process of starting to go through the interview process and learning more about the company and the role, I was actually already pretty familiar with them. I knew the tool, I knew who they served, I knew what their value proposition and mission statement was. And I think those things really helped me to be able to move through the interview process and eventually get to a place where they gave me an offer. And I also think it helped me when I wanted to negotiate things like my salary, because I was so familiar with the brand that they knew I could come in on day one and just like hit the ground running. So, think about the companies that you really like or companies that you might want to work for. Maybe they don't have any open roles open today, and that's totally fine. Still follow them, get their perspective. And as you start to follow those pages, you'll see people who are always in the comments or are always tagging that company, and follow them too. I think there's no such thing as too many perspectives. Customer success is a field that's changing all of the time. And so just ingesting all of those different perspectives, ingesting all of that new information, I think is so valuable and has been super helpful for me, especially when I was at Gong. And I still follow other companies because who knows where I'll be in 3 or 4 years. When it's time for me to make that pivot, I'll have other information as well. So that's everything I kind of had to share for you guys. I'm going to stop talking now and open up the floor to you all. Would love to hear questions, would love to hear feedback about customer success, tech, any of the things. So,
Well, first off, let me say that was an excellent presentation that you just did. Like, just phenomenal, sensational. Just wanted to say something. So I know the phrase is the customer is always right, but it's always funny to me that people don't repeat the second half, which is the customer is always right in matters of taste, which means you're not supposed to displease somebody from a sell that for any way. So like going back to your, the customer isn't always right unless we're trying to get rid of something. And so Dominique says, wow, this was a totally new field for me and I feel so enriched. Yet another incredible presentation with so much information and such fantastic tips. So then, I guess I'll kick off the question here. So that as a customer success manager, I know you're dealing with customers. What are some ways that you can help people grow their communication skills? Because I can imagine communication is a large part of your job.
So I'm actually going to say something that might be a little controversial, because I know I started by saying that I'm not a seller, but I think, and Gong has a good blog around this too. Gainsight also has some good tips, but sometimes I think actually reading up on some of the ways that salespeople use to start to communicate and learn how to talk to customers, I actually think is a really good transferable skill. And so what I mean by that is, like, one of the things you'll have to do as a customer success manager is pitch. Like, do you know how to make a value pitch? And you can start like with yourself. I think it's always important to have like a 30-second elevator pitch. So if I'm like, hey, Dom, how are you? What are you about? Like, I think you need to have that 30-second, like, here's who I am, here's the value I can bring, and here's how I can help you solve a problem. So starting kind of there with like that idea of pitching. Gainsight's blog is another good place for that. When we're thinking about email communication, I think like when you start to read those like blogs around selling and the blogs that Gainsight has, like, you'll start to pick up on things, because I think everyone's going to have their own like unique spin. I am a previous musical theater kid in another life, so I think I've always had a little bit more of like a quirkiness to how I interact with customers, and that's okay. But I just have to learn how to package that. So that's kind of where I would say to start, like, figure out how you can sell yourself on a pitch in an email and kind of spoken verbally. And once you've got that down, you can start to look through some of those resources to understand some of the like deeper communication skills. Like, Objection handling was one we talked about. Discovery, like really getting to customers' pain. Sandler methodology is one that I've used in the past that's been really helpful for me. It is a paid course, but if you just Google Sandler methodology, they kind of break down some like basic communication skill sets that, even though, like I said, it's technically for sales, I think is still really helpful for a customer success manager.
No, that's really good. So then I know you spoke a little bit about boundaries, that you love talking on the phone and talking with customers. So how does one go about setting boundaries in a position like this that's so customer and meeting focused?
Yeah, so I typically like to set boundaries with my customers and what I call expectations versus boundaries, since it sounds a little nicer, when I am kicking off any new customer relationship. And so what that might mean is when I kick off a new customer relationship, there's some things they need to know. I live in Philly, I work East Coast hours. If they work in LA and they're messaging me after 5 p.m. Eastern time, they're not going to get a response till 10 a.m. Eastern time the next day. So that's one boundary I set just in my inbox. When I'm out of office, I really am out of office. I delete Slack from my phone, I delete my email from my phone, and my out of office responder is on, and there is someone there to kind of help and manage that expectation. And on a like kind of micro level, in each call, before we dive into the agenda or the presentation, if I've got an hour, we set that expectation at the beginning. So like, hey Dom, like really great talking with you. Excited to dive into your business review. I have an hour set aside for this conversation. Does that still sound good for you? And now we're both on the same page about like how much time I've committed and how much time I'm going to allocate to this customer. And so when that hour mark comes around, no one's surprised that I'm like, all right, been great chatting. It's time for me to kind of move on to my next thing.
So then do you find yourself encountering like any difficult type of customers, customers, like you said, who don't know how to respect like boundaries, for example, who don't know, how to properly pitch themselves to Gong?
Yeah, so I think what's interesting about that is I actually think in a lot of ways, retail management had scarier customers to deal with. And that's because when you think about it, I'm not interfacing with a lot of people in person. Most of our interactions are going to be happening on Zoom or on email. And also, SaaS is a growing space, but it's still a small space. So for the most part, people will want to like maintain their reputation and make sure they're not known across the space as being hard to work with or difficult. But it still happens. And I would say that's where my retail management, I think, really comes through. Like I'm used to dealing with aggravated customers. I'm used to dealing with them in person across a cash register. And so having the ability to be on Zoom, like I'm at my home, I'm in my safe space. So I can just think about like techniques to like de-escalate myself so that I can deal with them in a really calm way. And what I found is like 90% of the time a customer is angry at you, there's actually something underlying that. So just taking a step back and being like, hey, I hear that you sound frustrated. Totally understand that you're frustrated. Let's talk about why is that and how can we get to a solution? Because that's what they want to hear.
Right. Very Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say, I see a question. What is the career?
Oh, no, I was going to put it on screen. That's why I was talking. But what does the career projection look like for this job?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it really depends on where you want to go. I think for myself, like I started working with like a larger book of business and I'm moving up market, and that's just the direction that my particular career is headed. From being a customer success manager, you can go a lot of different ways. So some people will get into customer success, realize they really like it, but maybe they are a little bit more ambitious. They're totally fine chasing a quota and being a little more aggressive in their conversations. And so they'll move into sales. I've seen that transition happen a lot. Being a customer success manager, you could just move up the ranks into like a team lead or manager type of role. And another pivot I see often is customer success managers moving to marketing. So as a customer marketing manager, helping craft messages for customers and events for customers, since we know the customer really well. I think you guys did one of these around product. That's another place I've seen people pivot into. I think it just depends on what you're passionate about and how you apply that skill set. You can really go a lot of different directions with a CSM background, because understanding a customer of a product is such a valuable thing to have for a company or a brand that if you're willing to apply yourself and learn those product management skills, you could move into product. If you want to move into a sales capacity because you're like, hey, I want to chase a quota, I want to make more money, you can move into sales. If you get into customer success and you're like, no, I love this is where I want to stay, you can just work your way up the ranks into kind of a management field if you want.
So speaking of product, I had noticed, when we looked on your profile, you had started as a product specialist for Calendly before you was able to make that transition to customer success. Can you give us an idea of like how that transition, what worked for you throughout that transition, how that product specialism helped you become this?
Yeah, so I came to Calendly primarily because I just felt like their company was about to go a lot of big places, and I wanted to be on that rocket ship as they moved along it. And working as a product specialist, my main function there was really just helping customers with support tickets. But in that, I was actually able to learn the product really, really well. And this is actually advice I give to people a lot of times. Like, if you're finding yourself getting blocked from a customer success role, look and see what their support team is doing and see if they're hiring, because I was able to make that transition pretty quickly. And I think one of the things that I did was the first was understanding like what am I responsible for and what are my KPIs or my key performance indicators. I took note of those KPIs and I made sure every single day I hit that KPI. So I had to be responsible for a number of tickets and then what we call a customer satisfaction score. So I made sure those two key points were stellar. And then from there, I worked with my boss to find opportunities for me to do more of those customer success manager type of things. So at the time, we didn't offer customer phone calls or phone support. But if a customer was escalated and wanted to get on the phone, I'd always volunteer myself to get on the phone to showcase I had that skill set. I could be on a phone with an escalated customer and de-escalate the situation. And then I also just kind of made clear to them like what my intentions were in the role. Like after I'd been there for a few months and I was getting good performance reviews, I was like, hey, the next place I want to grow is here. And so my manager and I were able to kind of create a roadmap for like, here's the checkpoints Ryan needs to accomplish. And then if a CSM role is open, like we would be willing to consider her for that role because she's showed these competencies.
Sensational. I love hearing about that, how you volunteer yourself, because oftentimes these companies will tell you you need to, take your career into your own hands, but a lot of times we don't know what that means. So I love hearing that you kind of said, I want to showcase my skills to let everyone know I can do these roles as I grow. So Tambria asks, is experimental marketing / events a great transition from customer success?
Do you mean, Tambria, you want to go into customer success from events or you want to go out of customer success into events?
It's a very good point and a very good distinction that we need. But
I was going to say, well, what I'll say there is so when I was at JCrew at Linux, one of the things that I was responsible for was the customer events that we hosted. I think there's a lot of transferable skills there. So project management, time management. If you're in like an event space, you're working with a lot of different vendors, so a lot of different personalities. Stakeholder management is another good skill set that I think you could bring over as a transferable skill into CS. And then on the opposite side, I have seen people move from customer success into marketing just because I think when you're moving into marketing and thinking about like, how can I be really successful at marketing in a product-based company? Understanding the product really well and understanding who the customer is really well will help you to thrive in that role. So that's where you could take those skills from customer success and transfer them into that kind of marketing type of role.
That's a very good answer. So then I'm curious. So then what would you consider the most difficult part of like your day-to-day?
That's a good question. I would say that honestly, like I am a big people pleaser. So I really had to learn how to not always please the customer and how to make sure I was understanding the other factors at play. Like if a customer came to me and wanted a refund, I just wanted to be able to give it to them because that's what they asked for and like kind of move on with my day. But as a business, if we give refunds to everybody who asked for them, even if there's not a good like legitimate reason behind it, we would never thrive and we'd never be cash positive. So that's just not something that we were able to do. So I would say still probably the most difficult part of my day is sometimes just trying to remember like, hey, I know that you want customers to think you're the best ever, but we also have to balance kind of what's happening in our business and balance some of these other pieces.
That's very difficult. And I can only imagine sometimes the discontent you will hear from customers when they unfortunately can't get that refund. So then, I know you shared a little bit about the resources, but now, I kind of want you to talk to the audience more about the tools you use in your day-to-day, for a position like this.
Yeah, so we're not a super tech stack heavy space at Gong, and I think that's just because Gong is a really good tool and is able to encompass a lot of our needs. But the customer success tools that I use most often, Gainsight is one that we use today. We're a G Suite office, so kind of the basic Gmail, Google Calendar functionality. We take most of our calls via Zoom. We also work with a tool called Sisense for our like data needs. So that's where I might pull reports for customers. And for the most part, that's really the main tools that I'll find myself kind of using daily, with Gainsight being probably the biggest one. And like I said, they're a leader in the space. They're another Facebook, or not Facebook, LinkedIn page that I follow. So really good tool, like really understands customer success and how we build our framework around like what is a healthy versus not healthy or at-risk customer.
So then I know a little earlier on we talked about like work-life balance and everything, and you set some boundaries. But could you go a little deeper, because I think some people still struggle what it means to set a boundary and understand like when I'm off work, I'm actually off work. So how some of those boundaries and how they help your mental health? What are some strategies you use?
Yeah, so I one of the things I like to do is at the top of each quarter, I look at my calendar ahead of time and make sure I've already put my PTO in place. I hit some really, really bad burnout in 2020 because I wasn't taking time off. We were in the beginning of a pandemic. I was working from home for the first time. I had a roommate who was also working from home for the first time, and I was just never off. Like I never had a time in my day where I was like completely disconnected, not in front of my computer, not taking calls. And I was at Calendly at the time, and we experienced some massive growth during that time frame. And so I actually sat down with my boss because I wrote, like, we had to write weekly updates about how we were doing. And I had put this like long weekly update. I mean, like all caps, exclamation points. Like I was just like mad about something. And it really just came from a place of burnout. I was so burned out. Like I didn't have anything to give to customers anymore. And so coming from that space, like what I've learned is at the top of each quarter, I look at when I'm taking my PTO, I look at when I'm disconnecting, and that actually helps me to set that boundary, because then it's an expectation I can set with customers because they're not surprised. They know my PTO is coming up. My team knows that my PTO is coming up. I can put it in my email signature if I'm going to be gone for a long time, just so that they can get accustomed to that idea of like, oh, hey, for 2 weeks, Ryan's not going to be in the office. This is who our contact's going to be. And so I think just planning ahead and having that time and space already helps me, because I know what I need to do to prep, to feel good to leave. And I know what I'll need to do when I come back to get myself caught back up. So then it becomes less of like a me and like, hey, I'm out of office, don't talk to me. And more of like, hey, like, remember we talked about this. I said I was taking this week off. I said this was your contact. Everybody should be good to go. And what I will say is the last time I took 2 weeks off, when I was moving to the Philadelphia area, I was so anxious about my email. I was so anxious that something was going to blow up, but I really challenged myself to completely unplug. And when I say not a single thing blew up, nothing bad happened, like nobody died. And so that was just a really healthy lesson for me, and understanding that I needed to take that time off to do what I needed to do. And I came back so much more rejuvenated and refreshed.
And I'm so happy that you put yourself first. 'Cause at the end of the day, you work for a company, but you are not that company. So, you still need the time for Ryan. And so for the last question of the night, Temporary also asked, are the product support manager and customer success roles similar in any way?
Yeah, great question. So I think you mean product management here. So I'll speak to that a little bit. When you think about product managers and what they're responsible for, they're going to be trying to build like a roadmap, or build what our product should be and how it should function. And they're building that based off the custom, based off a lot of things. So like the market landscape. So what are other competitors in the space doing? But also like what are our customers asking for, and what are the limitations that they're finding when they're asking for it? And so I think the overlap that you'll find with customer success is one of the big things I do in my role, or one of the big things I try to get at, is if a customer feels frustrated with their product or feels like it has a limitation, is to really understand like, why do you feel that way? And what about the product could be changed or could be different for us to get you to that 100% or that 110% where you love Gong and you're a raving fan of Gong. So that's where I see the overlap. And that's why a lot of times you will see people move from a customer success role into a product role at a company, because they really understand the customer base. They really understand like the pain points and where the product can grow to make customers really happy and to keep them as long-term customers. And so from there, they're able to move really easily into a product role because they can help set that roadmap of what we're going to build and what we're going to do next.
That was an excellent answer and an excellent way to end tonight. So, Ryan, I want to again say thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us. Thank you to the audience for coming out on a Friday night. We had 20-something of y'all come and show some love, so I'm thankful for each and every one of y'all. Again, connect with Ryan. I'm about to drop her LinkedIn in the description right here for y'all, but please make sure y'all go and connect with this really great person because she was giving everyone all kinds of tips on what they need to succeed in this type of space.
Thank you guys. So excited.
And so, on that note, we'll end it. Thank you so much for all that you've done, Ryan, for the community. Thank you for being here. Thank you for everybody. Our next series starts in August, so I can't wait to see y'all what we got planned for y'all next. But until next time, peace out.